Good afternoon, everybody. My name is DJ Statler, and I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. It's my pleasure to invite you here to this groundbreaking ceremony for the Long Bridge project. The VPRA team will tell you that I am not one for celebrations. I feel like we should celebrate in 2030 when the train goes by, and we can wave and celebrate by saying, okay, what do we do next? Ben Franklin said, speak little, do much. That being said, this project has been in the works, talked about for decades. Planning started in 2011, and today, in 2024, we are moving dirt, which is a huge accomplishment thanks to so many people. So just a round of applause for that. I'd also point out that having this ceremony in the month of October is appropriate because it was in October of 2009 that Virginia had their first state-supported train. That was the train that went from Washington to Lynchburg. Back then, we weren't really sure what was going to happen. We expected about 30,000 riders in that first year. 12 months later, 100,000 people rode that train. And that was the beginning of Virginia showing that if you put trains out there, people will ride them. This is a continuation of that effort. It's not just Virginians, however, that will benefit from the Long Bridge. Throughout the Transforming Rail in Virginia, we will deliver $7.2 billion to the economy. VPRA's capital investments will add a total of 13 round trip. We'll have 13 round trips to between here and Richmond by the time the bridge is done, and additionally we'll have extra VRE service to include nights and weekends. So I was told on-time performance I have only 2 minutes here, and it was a strict 2 minutes, and I was starting a minute late. But I need to just shout out folks that we would not be here without their help, and I'm going to miss names, and I apologize. But Secretary Pete Buttigieg, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. So the applause doesn't count towards my 2 minutes, right? I just want to be sure. Senator Warner, it's always good to see you. Thank you, sir. Senator Kaine, also always good to see you. You both have been incredibly supportive. Thank you. U.S. Representative Jerry Conley, thank you, sir. Representative Abigail Spanberger, thank you. I've not seen State Senator Jennifer Boysko, but I think she's here, so thank you, Jennifer. Delegate Carrie Delaney. So you notice when the trains go by, you can still hear me, but those planes you can't. Delegate Alfonso Lopez. Randy Marcus and Brian Barton, our partners from CSX. Sharon Kirschbaum's here from the District Department of Transportation. Thank you, Sharon. Danny Plogger, Virginians for High-Speed Rail. Thank you, Danny. Monica Backman and Kate Matisse from Northern Virginia, leaders. And then finally, I'll very quickly go through the VPRA board members that are here. Our board chair, Zach Trogdon. Patty Dorsch, thank you for coming, Patty. VRE CEO, Rich Dalton. I'm at 3 minutes and 20 seconds, sorry about that. Bruno Maestri from Amtrak. Our former board chair, Jennifer DeBrule, is here, thank you. Rod Hall, one of our inaugural board members who actually voted on the approval of the contract that's going to do this building, so thank you, Rod Hall. All right, I just got the buzz that says I'm late. So we'll begin this program with a supporter who's promoted passenger rail in the Commonwealth for years. Please welcome Congressman Jerry Conley.
Well, what a great day. You know, it's easy for people to say they support infrastructure, but when push comes to shove, how did you vote? Were you willing to vote for it? In the 117th Congress, the most productive Congress since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, really, we working mostly on our side of the aisle, but with a little help now and then from Republicans, we passed 3 transformative bills. The Inflation Reduction Act, the largest environmental investment in American history. Transformative. We passed the CHIPS Science Manufacturing Act, the largest industrial policy bill in American history, that's going to bring chip manufacturing and secure it here in the United States in making sure we're competitive for the next generations. And then we passed this bill, the infrastructure bill, the largest infrastructure investment in American history. And it is transformative. Today, we're celebrating $729 million for the Long Bridge as part of that bill. But that bill is the largest investment in roads and bridges since Dwight Eisenhower's interstate highway system. It is the biggest federal investment in public transit in American history. It's the largest clean drinking water investment in American history. It's the largest investment in universal broadband in American history. And it's the largest investment in grid modernization, which we desperately need in the United States, in American history. It's an extraordinary accomplishment. And it required two bodies in the Congress, not one, to pass that legislation and get it to President Biden's desk. And I and Abby, and I know Don Beyer, who's traveling for the good cause to help us in the election coming up 3 weeks from today, took great pride in casting those votes for the investment in the future. You know, Oscar Wilde once said, some people know the cost of everything, but the value of nothing. Investments have returns on them. This investment will have a return for decades. I mentioned the interstate highway system. It's still returning 70 plus years later. When you make investments in infrastructure and education and research and development, those aren't sunk costs. Those are gifts that keep on returning and make us stronger. And they're going to make this region stronger. They're going to facilitate commuting. They're going to facilitate employment. They're going to improve quality of life. This is an investment definitely that was worth making. And I'm glad to have cast my vote to make this day possible. Thank you all so much for being here today.
I am so excited that we are here, both because we are celebrating such an important day for Virginia, also because it's a bit warmer than the last time we were here. For those who remember that cold December day when we were only announcing millions of dollars in federal funding that would help secure this project. But today, now we know that that investment, it's becoming a reality, and it's becoming a reality for Virginians across our Commonwealth. And the maps that we have on display over there demonstrate the real impact that this investment will have on the lives of so many of my constituents, because up and down the 95 corridor, as we so commonly call it, I represent people who rely on passenger rail to get back and forth to work. And it will be transformative and really life-changing for us to know that we will have millions of Virginians who will be able to travel across the Long Bridge on Amtrak or VRE to get where they want to go and to do so on time. It was a running joke on Capitol Hill for so long that Infrastructure Week was going to come. Well, when it finally came, when we finally took those votes, when we finally developed extraordinary legislation, passed it in both chambers of the House and Senate, and sent it to the President's desk, we knew we were making major impact for our constituents. So I am excited because today's groundbreaking is yet another example of the real ways that this law continues to impact Virginians and make good on the promise of investing in our communities. And on behalf of the hundreds of thousands of people up and down the I-95 corridor who I have the honor of serving in Congress, I look forward to the day when riding along the new Long Bridge will ensure that people are having an easy commute to work, and that we will be able to see what a smart investment in action looks like. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Tim Kaine.
Thanks so much, and good afternoon. What a great occasion. So I'm going to start and just be honest with you. I'm here for kind of selfish reasons. I live walking distance from Main Street Station in downtown Richmond, Virginia. It was a historic train station that had been closed and mothballed, but when I was mayor, I bought it back from the state, renovated it, and we've reopened it to Amtrak service. And I work walking distance from Union Station here on Capitol Hill. The improvements to Long Bridge and in this corridor are going to make it dramatically easier for me to get to D.C. for the 36 weeks a year where we're active in the United States Senate. But I don't feel bad about being selfish because so many others are going to benefit from this investment. Whether you're on Amtrak to Richmond or Raleigh, North Carolina, or whether you're on Metro, or whether you're on VRE, or whether you're on Amtrak service that will veer out toward Lynchburg and Roanoke and the New River Valley and Bristol, or whether you're a cyclist that wants to ride on a pedestrian bridge that's now going to be available to you when we do this project, you are going to benefit from this amazing $720 million investment. Mr. Secretary, it's so great to be your partner. Our congressional delegation's partnering with you and the Biden administration to make this happen. One last thing I want to say. There's never anything you do in Washington that has been done forever. We got to reauthorize the infrastructure law. This was a 6-year investment that we made when we voted on it in November of 2021. And when we get into 2026, the question will be on the table for members of Congress. So what do you think? Did you value the road, bridges, Braille port, airport, broadband, power grid? Did you value that? Did you value the jobs that were created? Did you value the opportunities to connect communities in greater and greater ways? And we're going to have a great debate and a great vote in the next Congress of the United States about whether the 6-year investment should turn into a much longer term investment. And I have a feeling that even some of the folks who voted no the first time, having seen the impact on their communities all over this country, will now be over in the yes column. And I very much look forward to that. Let me now introduce Virginia's senior senator, who is also a resident right here in Northern Virginia, my friend Mark Warner.
Well, thank you, Tim. Matter of fact, thinking about that reauthorization, as a resident of Old Town Alexandria, I'm so glad the planes are taking off this direction. Thinking about that reauthorization, if we just keep all the folks who voted for it last time and add in all the members of Congress who didn't vote for it but have shown up in ribbon cuttings across the country during the last 5 years, we'll have an 85% passage. It is great to be here. DJ, I think it was always good. We were trying to see, DJ is famous for his grins and laughs. We were hoping we could get him to break a smile at this event. We did get it about a year ago. Abigail, you remember how cold it was? $729 million. And we want to thank the Secretary. We had, even with the infrastructure dollars, this is a competitive process. We had to make that case, and we're grateful for your support. And a lot of folks have been called out. I also need to make sure that we recognize Sharon Bulova, the former chair of the Fairfax Board, who is here as well, and active and been a supporter of all of these activities. The truth is, obviously, Virginia is going to be a huge beneficiary of this. We mentioned Amtrak and VRE, but this has been a choke point for rail traffic all up and down the East Coast. If you're coming out of Boston, out of New York, and you wanted to get anywhere south of Washington on the train, this was the choke point. Adding this additional capacity is huge. And echoing, as Jerry has said, none of this is easy. The real backstory of a bill that Tim and I had to pass to the Long Bridge Act to make sure that, and we had to do a bunch of jumping through hoops with our friend Joe Manchin to get the Interior Department to give the land, to get through. The sausage making is never that easy, but it is all now come to fruition. $729 million, we're grateful for that. This bridge will be constructed. It will open up rail traffic. It will rail up hikers as well as cyclists. It's a great win for all of us. And I'm going to now introduce Richard Smith. Richard, who is a member of the Painters, a great part of the AFL-CIO, who I think will introduce the Secretary and also talk about the incredible number of union jobs that are going to be working on this essential project. Richard, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Smith. I'm a resident of the city of Alexandria and a proud 22-year member of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. I worked as an industrial painter all my life on almost every type of infrastructure project imaginable. Transportation, bridges, water, submarines, you name it, I've worked on it. It's been hard work, but I'm grateful that a career in the trades has allowed me to build critical infrastructure across the country. And I'm grateful that a career in the union trades has allowed me to do so while providing for my family with health care, a pension, strong wages, safety, and security on the job. We're here to celebrate the groundbreaking of the Long Bridge Project, which will transform the future of passenger rail in Virginia. Projects like the Long Bridge are an opportunity to connect people. It will connect communities from Richmond to D.C., all along the 95 corridor. It will connect my sisters and brothers in the trades to good-paying, family-sustaining jobs. It will connect our local high schools and vocational programs with on-the-job opportunities because not everyone needs to go to college to have a career. And as a father of a son who is also a painter, that one means a lot to me. And this project will connect me closer to my community because although I've traveled across the country painting bridges, I much prefer to stay closer to home. I'm honored to introduce someone today who has been instrumental in getting projects like the Long Bridge and many others like it off the ground. Secretary Buttigieg has worked hard to ensure the investments from the bipartisan infrastructure law are producing meaningful infrastructure projects across the country and creating union jobs at the same time. Secretary Buttigieg, my whole career, has been putting finishing touches on critical infrastructure projects to make sure they last for future generations. It is my honor to introduce you because you have the same mission. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Richard, for that excellent introduction. Thank you for what you do and all of your fellow Union of Painters and Allied Trades members and all of those who are working on our infrastructure. It's a big part of why we're here, and we thank you for it. And by the way, for anybody who thinks because you know what it's like to paint a room, you know what it's like to paint a bridge, I would invite you to have the experience that Richard's union colleagues patiently walked me through learning how to use a shot blaster and see if you can stand upright while you do it. It is an incredibly demanding and highly skilled job, as you know well, and we're glad that there are professionals doing that. Can't we just send the planes to runway 4? Is there somebody who, no? I want to thank all of the leaders who are here, including those who spoke. I'm so glad to be here with Senator Kaine and Senator Warner, who were partners in shaping this bipartisan infrastructure package. Likewise, Representative Connolly and Representative Spanberger, as well as Don Beyer, who can't be here, but I know is passionate about this. I want to make very clear this project is happening because of your congressional delegation in more ways than one. First of all, their advocacy for this project specifically, because as was mentioned, even though that pot of funding was there, it was far from certain that this much of it would come here unless that case was made. But also the simple fact that we have this infrastructure bill. Now we're so used to it, it's like it couldn't have been any other way. This is not something, as a matter of fact, the political obituary of this infrastructure bill was written half a dozen times by commentators across the river before we finally got it done. So it is a testament to their support, perseverance, bipartisan hard work, and leadership that we're able to do this. And everybody here who's excited about this project ought to be thanking, among many others, your congressional delegation. Let me also acknowledge a couple other members who can't be here who were part of that. Representative Wexton, who has been such a key part through her committee work and her leadership of making sure that we're able to do this. and Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's on the T&I committee, very passionate about this work as well. And when they told me that our proceedings would begin with a DJ, I have to admit I had the wrong idea. But thank you for your work on this and for keeping your eye on that 2030 vision. Before turning to the matter at hand, I do want to take a moment just to acknowledge the ongoing relief and recovery response taking place across the Southeast in the aftermath of Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and knowing that that has affected Virginia, among other states. Already, the U.S. Department of Transportation has directed $134 million in emergency funding to North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee for some immediate needs for getting critical routes back up and running. We're directing another $3 million through our Thriving Communities program to help communities impacted by those disasters. And these are just the earliest steps. We're going to continue working at the President's direction across all federal agencies to make sure that impacted communities get the resources that they need. And I plan to visit some of the affected areas later this week to get a firsthand understanding. I just want to emphasize, too, in my conversations with the governors and local leaders in the various states that have been impacted, you would never know who belonged to which party. And I very much hope that spirit will prevail when Congress comes back to attend to the disaster funding needs that are going to emerge. So with that, I do want to talk about the good news at hand. I have had the great pleasure of celebrating groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings and other events now in literally every state in the union. But it's rare that I get to mark one at a venue that's occasionally part of my morning routine. And back when I got it in my head to do a triathlon, I remember swimming here and then hitting the trail and thinking, well, we're right by the bridge. I'm just going to run right on over there, only to realize that while it might be very close as the crow flies, you got to go down to Crystal City, pick up the magnificent Mount Vernon Trail, get back up to D.C. In order to enjoy running on the mall. And while the bike and pedestrian part of this scope is a little separate from the grant we're celebrating, I'm still very glad that it's part of the overall vision for this project. It's going to be a great quality of life benefit and safety benefit around here. Anyway, all of which is to say, I'm very excited to be able to celebrate with you at something a little bit closer to headquarters. Now, on Long Bridge today, freight and passenger rail that share the tracks that cross this bridge at a time when passenger ridership is on the rise and when capacity is virtually maxed out at peak hours, are depending on a structure that is more than 100 years old. And we know that something like this is happening in a lot of parts of the United States, but rarely in the United States will you find a single piece of infrastructure on which so many people depend every single day. A more modern structure and updated capacity are going to be vital to sustain that level of traffic, and we're going to have a lot more coming. Supporting the economic growth that's happening in this region requires us to make investments that should have been made a long time ago. And now, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure package, that investment is actually happening. The funding, which has long been needed, is in hand. Key planning milestones have been met. And so today, on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, I have the privilege of joining you to officially celebrate the groundbreaking of the new Long Bridge. It's an exciting day for passenger rail in Virginia, with much needed repairs to the existing bridge and a new two-track passenger rail bridge between Virginia and D.C., and not a moment too soon. With the partnership of the members of Congress here today, the VPRA, and the work of so many of my colleagues in the Federal Rail Administration, led by Amit Bose, our administrator, thanks for your work on this, we are making good on President Biden and Vice President Harris's promises. And I just want to stress that what that means is we're not just connecting the East Coast, but really taking a major step toward America having a better connected, more robust passenger rail system. We're putting an end to the years of Americans saying, why can't we have nice things in passenger rail like people in so many other countries do? It's happening across the country. Earlier this year, I was in Las Vegas, where we broke ground on a project that will be the first true high-speed rail operating on American soil, connecting to Southern California. I was in Raleigh to break ground on a passenger line that's going to connect to Wake Forest and eventually on up to Richmond, which means one day trains starting there could find their way all the way through these new and improved bridges into D.C. after picking up the senator on his way to come vote. And next week, we're going to be breaking ground on a project that's going to restore service to the Gulf coastline between Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, since it was suspended 20 years ago as a result of Hurricane Katrina. Huge things are happening for passenger rail in the United States of America, and it's a huge turnaround from where we were just a little while ago. As Representative Spanberger mentioned, just 4 years ago, just before we got here, Infrastructure Week had become a punchline in this town. There's a lot of talk, but no action, and certainly no $729 million in grants to get something like this done. And yet the needs grew and grew from both the deterioration of the older assets and the rise in new demand from the economic growth that you're seeing along that Raleigh to Richmond to D.C. corridor. Now, at last, we are meeting the moment, and we're reinforcing a growing national network of passenger rail. In addition to repairs to the existing Long Bridge and construction of a new bridge, this is also funding that will go to critical improvements along the rail corridor between D.C. and Richmond. But today isn't just about trains. As Richard reminded us, today is also about jobs. The overall Transforming Rail in Virginia program alone will create more than 36,000 jobs. To say nothing of the business and investments that are going to grow as a result of these enhancements going into service. And that is going to add to some staggering totals created just in the last few years. Since the Biden-Harris administration took office, more than 16 million new jobs have been created, including 1.7 million manufacturing and construction jobs, with construction employment at the highest level recorded since data was first collected in 1939. So the point is, this isn't just a bridge. It's an investment in our way of life, in our economy, in our future. We are building safe, accessible, resilient transportation that is going to stand the test of time with your help. And as we do that, we are making good on the idea that Americans ought to have just as good or better passenger rail than people who live anywhere else in the world. My hope and expectation, I see our very youngest attendee back there. How old are we there? 3 weeks. Congratulations. So by the time that infant is old enough to ask us what we were doing in the early 2020s to set up this country for success, they won't know a country, and my kids who are 3 right now won't know a country that didn't have high-speed rail and excellent passenger rail. And I think that's a legacy we can all be very proud of. So thank you for everything you've done to get us here. And save me a seat at that ribbon cutting in 2030, please. Congratulations again to everybody who's part of this.